people ask me, should everybody go to counseling? Everybody go to counseling, and I always say everybody should live an examined life. So most of the time you need help to do the examination. And so whatever that is for you, a pastor, a counselor, coach, a friend that's really intentional. So seek to live an examined life.
What's up, guys? I'm here to tell you this episode is brought to you by Crowd Health. Crowd Health is a new, fast-growing, tech-enabled, well-capitalized, community-powered alternative to traditional health insurance. Founded by Andy Schoonover, a proven founder and entrepreneur with a successful track record, including a $100 million plus exit. By the way, Andy's been on this podcast in the past. Crowd Health uses the power of crowdfunding, member ratings, unlimited choice, and huge cash pay discounts to provide a simple, considerably less expensive solution to managing your medical bills. Crowd Health gives you full agency and sticks with you no matter where you move or what jobs you take on. You've heard of Big Pharma, but you may not know Big Insurance is actually the man behind the curtain. With 12 of the last 15 heads of the FDA taking jobs in Big Pharma and 64% of its funding coming from private industry, don't hold your breath waiting for the government to save the day. It's safe to say our system's broken. It's time to take your well-being into your own hands, and Crowd Health helps you do just that. You'll pay into your individual account monthly, and if you ever want to leave, you'll simply pay a $250 closing fee, and they will return the entire balance in your account to you because it's your account. Because it's crowdfunded, we all have a vested interest in each other's health. They even cover up to $300 a year in routine wellness visits. So far, for every $100 members have paid into their accounts, an average of only $30 has been paid out. So you can expect to see your money grow in your account over time. Take that, Big Insurance. Join today by visiting joincrowdhealth.com and using the promo code KLP to pay only $99 a month for the first 3 months. That's joincrowdhealth.com, promo code KLP. Joincrowdhealth.com. Get you some. All right. Well, Chad and Meeka Karger, we love you guys very much. Thank you for doing this. We really appreciate it. And not only do we love you, we respect you, and I would even dare say look up to you guys in a lot of ways.
Just dare to say that. Don't
I
actually
just dare to say it. I just did.
Love y'all too.
Yeah, well, thank you. But one of the areas that we definitely look up to you guys in is your parenting, because you've been helpful with us in that area in the past. And you're empty nesters, and you have that sort of proof of concept. And so we feel like, for the most part, we feel like we can't tell whether we're very average parents or the worst parents in the world. Yeah. And we've been, I say we feel like we've been going through a rough patch in the last, I don't know, half a year probably. Mm-hmm. And so we were thinking, well, we want to get with you guys, and we were trying to figure out whether it should be a podcast or literally just get with you guys and ask you some questions about parenting. But I was like, well, the worst that can happen, the worst that can happen here is we make a fool of ourselves, Yeah. Yep. So we opted to see if you guys would do the podcast. So here we are. Thank you very much.
So happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Yep, just stay nice and close, Meeka. Oh, yeah, and Meeka, you were trying to pretend like you were nervous about this or whatever. Well, just so you know, you don't need to be nervous on this podcast because no one listens to it. So you're good. This is not the podcast to be nervous about. We can get that out of the way.
Her kids are probably going to listen to it. So that's,
Well, at least we'll get 3 extra listeners on this one.
Well, see, we have a daughter-in-law and a future daughter-in-law, so you might get 5 extra listeners.
Better yet. Better yet.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys are great parents, and you have been so hospitable and had us over to your home and been around your family and spent time with you guys. So and we get to be in the same church family
Absolutely.
As you guys. So it's just wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here. So.
No doubt. Well, thank you. Yeah. And I will also say, like, our kids are, so far they're turning out pretty well, which doesn't make any sense. But,
That's what we say.
Yeah,
This
is
God's
like
grace.
a basic.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the basic parental things that I say to myself and whoever's listening to me talk about this is my kids make me look better as a parent than I actually am.
Wow.
Okay.
So it's like there's so much of the magic sauce as we know in all aspects of our life as Christ followers is God's grace.
Yeah.
And nowhere is that more apparent than being a parent. So to me, like we were talking about this coming on. We were driving home from an event last night and we were talking about how the way we said it in the car was there are no experts who are being parents. You know what I'm saying? Like parenting is not the job of an expert. Like to me, this is such a...
If there's an expert, they probably don't have kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say,
or maybe one or two. Look, I feel like if we'd have stopped at two no, let's put it this way. Of the 5, we could pull out pretty much 2 and feel pretty good about the situation. Maybe even 3, but all 5 together.
Yeah. Well, I just think like this to me is like so important. And our Christian faith really gives us the language to be able to openly talk about this idea that parenting is not the job of an expert. Parenting, we were talking about the passage in Paul's letter where he says we're jars of clay and we hold this surpassing power, which is from God, not from ourselves. And so as a parent, you really are a vessel when you think about it, and what you're giving to your kids, whether it's DNA, life, food, days, or even the spiritual principles, they don't originate in you. They were given to you, and you're passing that along to them. You're stewards of that. They belong to God. You're in their life on behalf of God. And I think that to me is just like everything we're going to say, in relationship to this today, that's like a major foundational principle that frames up the discussion as far as, we're concerned on this topic. So
would that be an area where that's sort of like a truth that we would have as believers that, I guess not everyone would have?
Exactly. I think this is where like it's so helpful to have a biblical framework that really tells a really good story about what it means to be a parent. Like when you think about it, a distortion of that is to think that you have to be an expert and that you might get it really, really wrong, and you probably will, and that's really tragic and irreversible and inalterable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying.
Yeah. And what does that conjure up? Like we were just saying in the car, it conjures up fear, which is the worst thing you could be processing as a parent, really is this deep sort of existential fear, spiritual fear. And it's
not a good foundation.
It's not a good foundation. And so to me, like, yeah, I think, when you just venture into the bookstore and look at books on parenting, there's this sense in which you're either going to get it right or wrong. You're either going to learn how to do this really well or you're going to be a failure. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just telling Chad a funny story on the way over. I was remembering when I was pregnant with our first, we had a few friends visit us from Houston. We were living in Denver at the time. And I was, 6 months pregnant, and they were about 10 years ahead of me in life and had kids. And they're like, what parenting books are you reading? And I was like, none. And it was just kind of funny. It's like, but I wasn't, I don't know. I didn't depend on somebody else's advice.
Okay.
I just, we were in it together and walking with Jesus and just trying to live authentically with our little family and being just honest.
Yeah.
Did that theme then stick with your parenting? Did you never really read a whole ton of parenting books?
No.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Okay.
And
We haven't really either.
We haven't.
No,
Yeah.
I don't know. Of all the books I'm attracted to, I guess I haven't felt an urge for that.
I just think like there's just, as a parent, you're kind of getting at this a minute ago. You never know how well you're doing at it. It's such a long game. Like how effective are these things that we're doing? Like, where are we going to see the payoff on this? Where are we going to see the fruit of this? It's just like, it's just so far off in some of the things that you're really, it's like, kind of like growing a garden or something. It's like, you're really committed to the long haul here. And other people might come into your life and say like, man, your kids seem to be really doing well, or your kids are really doing well. But you're like, okay, thankful. I'm glad you see that. I'm glad you're saying that. They do seem to be doing pretty well. I'm thankful for that. But the payoff in this way, the fruit of it is just such a long game. It's such a long perspective. And of course, that's, to me, again, our faith, the Christian faith and teaching in Scripture really has a lot to say about that. Faith, the idea of faith is that. And that's where I think outside of our Christian faith and just the culture in which we live, that's why parenting is a really difficult thing to grapple with, because, you're bringing your own baggage. There's a real sense of like hopelessness in that. Like, I'm going to do all this damage to my child, and then what? It's like, we have an answer to that. We are going to damage them. We are going to hurt them. We are going to do things that confuse them, disparage, whatever. Mm-hmm. But our hope is not that we're, in the end, great parents. Our hope is in Christ. So Christ, to me, like, that's what I'm just saying. That's so foundational. Christ is at the center of the parenting journey, and that to me is just, before we get into a lot of like granular things around parenting, that's the principle hopefully we can just keep coming back to and thinking through,
Yeah. And it's like good news and bad news all at once, because the good news is kind of obvious there. The bad news is that if they actually then turn out to be great, however you want to judge that, you can't take any credit, really.
It really takes the pressure off.
It does take the pressure off.
Absolutely.
That should be the effect of it. I think there's a sense in which now, then you can like be curious. You can play. Like, I think one of the things that Meeka did really well, she was joking about not reading books about being a parent, but she was really committed to things that she really enjoyed and bringing the kids along in that, like going for walks in the park, bike rides, that sort of thing. And I think this is like such a huge thing as a parent, is you can get stuck in this place where you're trying to prohibit things, and you can kind of overplay your hand there, especially as they get older. And the idea is to really invite them into the better story. Mm-hmm. It's not, don't go over it. It's not so much stop doing that, don't
say
do
less,
that.
No.
Yeah, say less, as few no's as possible, and more yeses. Mm-hmm. I mean, and so that was something that, I was working. Meeka stayed home with our kids in the early years there, and they spent a lot of days at the park.
We did. We were outside as much as possible.
That was just a natural interest for you.
Absolutely.
And you were just bringing them along.
And honestly, I really think that's important, to be outside and God's creation and beauty and glory, and to move and not be sitting in front of a television, So if it was a pretty day, forget nap times, we're outside. Who cares about the dishes?
Yeah.
We were outside a lot. I just felt like that was important.
Well, we couldn't agree with that more. I mean, it legitimately, like, joking aside, it's one of the benefits of having been raised Amish and Mennonite.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We didn't have TVs. Like, you didn't, well, and back then no one had iPhones and no one had tablets and stuff, but we didn't have TVs and weren't supposed to listen to the radio. So, I mean, it's like, well, you got to find something to do. Mm-hmm. And if it's nice outside, it's a whole lot easier to find something to do outside than inside.
I think being Canadian without cable might have been a lot like being Amish.
Literally. Did you not have?
We had a couple of channels.
Oh, yeah? How about internet?
So Canadians without cable.
No one had internet?
I was like, this is amazing. Canadians without cable or internet are like Amish in the United States. Yeah. This is like a revelation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is, like we talked about, this podcast is conversational. This is going to be conversational, of course, but I feel like this one maybe is also a little bit different in that, like, we have questions and we text them to you guys.
You did.
So I'm going to, like, unashamedly just read some questions too, or not read, but make sure we speak to them. Well, what is the role of parents and how did you guys generally go about it? And I know you're already talking about it, but.
Keep them alive.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, give them life at a really basic level. Like that's, as a parent, by definition, that's what you've done. And even if you've adopted a child, you're still cultivating real physical, biological life in them. But at this, as you kind of just move up, spiritual life and in a sense of, God's presence in their life and that they're not the center of the universe. I mean, yeah, those are some of the things to me. Help them to explore the world. Give them a sense of curiosity. Yep. These are things to me definitely that we were planting.
And find out what they're curious about.
Yeah.
And, I probably didn't do that as well as I could have, but what they are curious or passionate about, give them, assuming it's a good thing, empower them to be able to explore that and to do that if it's within your means.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
empower them. Yeah, I think, and have a healthy sense of themselves. Again, in the context of God who created them, so kind of put them in their place, as it were. As a parent, seems like a real foundational issue. Is like kind of put them in their place, which is both kind and it sometimes feels severe to a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the role, this just come to my head right now, but we're supposed to be teaching them always, not just like, now we're going to have Bible study time. I mean, we're supposed to always be talking and engaging with them and, hopefully being, like you're saying, a vessel and for the Holy Spirit to be speaking into their lives and shepherding them. I mean, that's not set aside for 30 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You think about like the best teacher in the world would be someone who you could apprentice.
Sure.
You could come alongside of. And I mean, that's really, is what you're doing with your child is like, come along with me and let me show you this.
Because we are on the same road as our kids.
Yeah,
we're just a little further down.
Yeah.
But we don't have it all figured out.
Yeah, that's the big
and
revelation eventually in the kid's life is like, oh, you don't know it all.
Yeah.
I've told Lincoln already, our oldest son, I was like, buddy, because we were working through something. I was like, I don't know how to do this either. This is the first time that I'm parenting and a 12-year-old. Like, I'm just trying to figure this out with you. So
that's
having, trying to have them understand as well that you're walking this road too. You're not always sure what you're doing.
Absolutely. And the fact that you're willing to be vulnerable and honest is so huge. Yeah. And when you screw up, to say, I'm sorry, that was yucky and I didn't respond well, or I shouldn't have, said that, or I should have let you do that, or whatever. I mean, just being willing to be honest.
Again, I think that's where our Christian faith gives us such a compelling picture of that. Like that humility in parenting and that, newsflash, I don't know it all. I've never had a 12-year-old. This is my first go around. Mm-hmm. And to me, those are really fruitful seeds that you're planting in his life. Even if it's, did you hear me? Did you hear what I said there? That was pretty big. That'll mature. He'll hear that and see that over the years and really come back to that,
Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of cool seeing like how quick they get smart.
Yeah.
I mean, Lincoln's 12, he's almost 13. So, he's plenty old enough to piece 2 and 2 together. But this is a couple months ago. He was like, now your dad died at 10. Is it possible you don't really know how to, like, is it possible? Like you basically like,
you don't know what you're doing.
It's entirely possible, buddy.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible.
I'm going to go in the other room now and get some tissues. I'll be right back. Thanks for bringing that up.
Now, the best talks that I've had with Lincoln, I think he's been great to have as a firstborn because like he's paving the way, and it's like just going on a walk with him, going on a walk, like a little walk and talk or something. Seems like the best way to get through to him. You mentioned, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the idea of instilling, I don't think you said like self-esteem, but, having them have a dignity about themselves. What are some of the ways that you went about that? Is it just being respectful to them, treating them like a human?
I think that's part of it, is respecting their point of view, noticing what they're good at and affirming them in that. I think too, having them in adult spaces, we had some really important friends in our life that they were friends with. I mean, that respected them as human beings. They were still children at that time, but they really were welcomed into that space, and it's dignifying.
It's very dignifying. Yeah. I try to, and I'm pretty sure I'm not overboard with this because that would be weird, but I do try when I'm around like friends, close friends that have kids, I try to like acknowledge the kid.
Yeah.
Because I remember how that felt as a kid.
Absolutely.
When one of your parents' friends or just another adult acknowledge you, whether they just gave you a fist bump or a high five, whatever it was, hey, what's up? Just acknowledge you.
Absolutely.
It goes a long way.
It goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of this, I don't want to go off this tangent too much, but sometimes in the Christian faith, we are so afraid of inflating the self such that it eclipses who God is. So the self is centered, that we almost go overboard in not cultivating a healthy sense of self and identity. But if you start with that first premise we were talking about, Christ is at the center of this project, these kids belong to them, what we're giving them is the power of God, not our own, then you can, in that context, really encourage and help them grow in this sense of identity building and concept of self. And they grow to appreciate that in this bigger picture,
I think it's important too to remind them. I'm distinctly remembering a time with Amy when she was young, and I think this was right around the time that she came to faith, and she had gotten in trouble, and she was upset, and she's like, I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm like, Amy, she was like gonna will or something. It's like, you actually are. You're going to mess up. I said, that's why we need Jesus. That's why we all need Jesus. So I think, yes, obviously, building them up and giving them dignity, but also reminding them that they actually are sinful. They have to live a confessional life also. They're going to mess up.
Did you do anything to prompt that confessional life? I don't know, it's a manual term, but I think of like walking in the light with the kids or whatever. Did you just sort of model that for them by you going to them and admitting if you made a mistake, and that was a way to teach them that? Or?
Yeah, we definitely did that, and to each other. I mean, I think we were attending church regularly, and so we had them in spaces where this was being taught. We talked about it, on the point, just scripture around the dinner table, how important it is. And so, I think, again, you're kind of modeling for them this better way. There's a better way to live, and it's not a burden in the sense of like, woe is me, I'm a complete loser, shame-filled. There's a lot of dignity in the concept of sin and forgiveness, humility, gratitude, reconciliation, So to me, like, it's really cultivating that idea.
Saying sorry to them.
Yeah, saying.
I remember, losing, my temper when boys, especially, I remember when they were little, just like, it's exhausting, and I do remember saying sorry. And with the sweetest thing, they're so quick to forgive, and they just move on. They are okay. I'm a mess, but they're so forgiving. But modeling that, yes, to them, like apologizing when I mess up towards them.
What were some of the other key values that you guys were deliberate about wanting to instill in the kids?
We talked about this. This was one of the questions you sent to us, and so one of the ways that we were talking about was like we kind of took it a different way. We said we really were trying to cultivate virtue in their life, like the Christian virtues. So created an environment where you really learn these virtues of humility, generosity, like the fruit of the Spirit that God wants to bring about in your life, and faith, hope, and love, these, Christian virtues. And as we were talking about it, my approach was more of like kind of thinking through and creating those virtues, and then you could talk about the values, like how to kind of orchestrate your life, like how to make choices. To me, that seemed like the right order. It seemed like the right order that you can go. And like then they get put into school or they're in sports, and you've laid down this virtue, this foundation for virtues. Then you put them in these contexts where they begin to experience loss, rejection, failure, success, whatever. Mm-hmm. Now you can talk about like what's most important. How does that connect with our virtues, what we believe,
How would you, so the difference between a virtue and a value is interesting. Mm-hmm. Is there a easy definition, or how do you think about that?
I mean, I think about virtue as being more of like a character, like a development. And values are, like, to me, connected with our beliefs and our cognitive structures, and of course Scripture informs both of those for us. Mm-hmm. But the way you think about it, it's, it might be just semantics, but God sort of changes the man and it changes his life. Mm-hmm. He changes the heart and it changes his way. Mm-hmm. I think a value is kind of generating the way that we live by, and God changes the heart, which is really where the virtues.
Oh, that's,
that's and interesting. So to me, like as a parent, that's what you're doing. These kids are just so moldable at such a foundational level, and that's what you're really shaping in them is this, again, these virtues.
So like candor would be probably a value, and then love would be a virtue.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I mean that is something, isn't it? Because what stands out to me about that was something that I was thinking of recently too, which is like, man, the Christian faith has the best answers for everything. Right. Like, I mean, and I don't think I'm saying that just because that's what I believe, but like, when you think about those virtues, the fruits of the Spirit, if you have those and you live your life in those ways, that's about as good of a foundation as you can sort of set.
It's pretty compelling.
Yeah. For like, that's a really good way to go through life, actually.
Yeah.
That's going to cause good things to you and from you. I mean, that's a really good foundation.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about other religions to know if like, if some of the other ones have really good foundation like that also or not. But it does seem like the Christian faith does have, even like, like what happens after you die.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't it be great if that wasn't just the end of things?
Yeah.
And the Christian faith has a belief on that too. And it's actually it's about as best case scenario as you're going to get.
And the Christian faith has a free thing called grace.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't have to do anything, actually.
Yeah.
We're doing something because we are compelled to out of love and gratitude. But it's not. We're not trying to earn anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the key to the Christian
I think
faith.
that's so,
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
I think that love is such a...
What's motivating
Yeah.
us.
Like love is, when you read 1 Corinthians 13, that passage about God's love and what it looks like and all of its beauty and power. And when we catch glimpses of that in the world by other people reflecting that to us, it's so powerful. It really is life-changing. Mm-hmm. And so as a parent, to think that your kids have a front row seat to that, is just, it's really humbling, and I hope that there's like freedom in that,
Yeah. Yeah. And like you think about peace, like when you're just around someone who's just has peace, like has inner peace. I mean, that's like, that's so compelling.
Yeah.
And you put them all together, if you can, have all of them, but each alone is really powerful. Humility.
Yeah.
My goodness. When you're around someone who has humility, like those things really stand out.
Yeah. And I think that's what we I'm not, this is not a judgment, but like the way in which we went about doing this, and again, there's so many different ways to do this parenting thing well, So what I'm about to say, how we did this, like we weren't sitting down with like charts and graphs and teaching on whiteboards or handouts, in our family devotions. We were trying to kind of on the way of our life in sports, say with the kids being in soccer or in their school or at our church or at a concert or in a film or listen to something on the news. We were trying to always highlight the virtues or the contrasting virtue that was being shown, and then how that would change your values and the way you try. So we're always trying to capitalize on those moments.
Yeah, just staying in conversation and
Yeah,
engaging them.
Exactly.
I don't remember ever setting out when we were having kids saying what values or virtues do we want.
No, I think these are things that we just by God's grace. That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, that's God's faithful to give you that wisdom. That's another really compelling part of the Christian belief is, God says he comes near to the humble, and he gives us wisdom, and all we have to do is really ask for that, and so as a parent, you're living and dying by that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Did you have anything like resembling a daily habit where you would pray or read a devotional or read some scripture together?
We would always have dinner together.
Always.
Oh yeah?
Pretty
every
much.
Day? Almost every day?
Yeah.
Even when, we had 3 kids playing club soccer, so that got a little crazy in the evenings. So I remember a year where we were having dinner at like 4:00
because soccer then would happen.
We were like, we are, because everybody, was.
Okay.
So dinner together would allow us to sit at the table together, to pray together, to talk through a day, to talk through things that are happening in the world or our worlds or their world. And then we would have like times where we read the Bible. We'd sit in a circle sometimes as a family, and like I would pray for Meeka, Meeka would pray for Maryanna, you would pray for him. And then we kind of do that, And so, we read the Jesus Storybook Bible.
Absolutely. Okay. And Chad was a lead pastor their whole time growing up.
Yeah.
So they were hearing him from the pulpit every single week. So
it's like
we would maybe talk about that,
Sure.
at dinner. Not always, but sometimes, might come up, or a kid might ask a question or.
Yep. Yeah. But that also added to the busy schedule, because I know you went through a patch where it was kind of crazy with your schedule, but you still really sought to prioritize dinners together.
Yeah.
It's inspiring.
It is. We both grew up that way. I mean, I don't even know if I can really remember any time where we just like grabbed something and ran. Like we sat down at the table and had dinner, and it was 4:45. It was early. 4:45 to 5:00 dinner. And we don't.
We struggle with it.
Yeah.
I think because the kids come home from school, do their chores, and they want to meet up with their buddies and play. And so if we call them and we're like, hey, come home for dinner at 5, they don't like it at all. Like, they don't want to. And so it's like, well, can we have dinner at 6:30 when they come home? But by that time, the 4-year-old, she's almost ready for bed. She's going to want her dinner earlier than that. I don't know. I think we need to figure out.
I think the schedule's probably not the main issue. I think that it's not always the most peaceful time.
Yeah.
And it can be like sitting around the table can actually trigger a lot of contention, it seems like.
That's
and so sometimes it's just easier not to do that.
No, we definitely had that. We had one of our children, we have 3. I won't name this child, but their relationship with, like, say, carrots was fairly complex.
Yeah. Fairly combative.
Yeah. Like, the way this child, like, maneuvered carrots down his stomach was just like, seriously, what are you doing?
Yeah, dinner wasn't always a happy
No. So I don't want to give the impression.
Yeah.
So, and so we definitely had moments, or, one of them was bugging the other, or we weren't on the same page, or so again, our great hope in that is not like that we're always going to get it right at dinner time. And it's this beautiful synced up. Yeah. It's like we're better together, even when we're a mess.
Okay.
Oh, I
okay.
like that.
You know, even when we're like a mess and it's kind of tattered, we're still better together. And so to me, that again, that's a value that comes from that virtue of like, you know, humility, love, thinking of others, you know, so.
But I mean, that doesn't have to be something that every family does.
No,
either.
I'm not giving a commandment here. Yeah.
So,
Right.
Heck no.
Right. But it's interesting about that better together thing, because it's also interesting how I feel like maybe that's sort of what they desire down deep, because Ava, our oldest daughter, who's 8, like she came up with this slogan on her own, which is "Our family sticks together." She likes to draw a lot, and she would draw like she almost had like a logo. Not almost, she had a logo for it. I think it was like a heart or something. It said "Our family sticks together," and this would pop up on like various notes. And finally, we're like, you know what? We can own that. Our family sticks together. Go Ava. So she like brought that into the family.
Love it.
And so it was like inside of her, you know, like that's what she desired, even though it can sometimes be contentious when we're all together. That's like what she desires, that the family sticks together.
I mean, that's it.
That's so sweet.
That's so sweet. And just coming out of that place of like, you know, God obviously has given her that wisdom early in her life. She's sensing that value starting to emerge for her. Like, that's beautiful. You're watching that happen. You're cultivating that.
Yeah. Can you speak to, I don't like the word balance, and I feel okay about that when Ray told me a few years ago he doesn't like it either. So I don't want to say balance here. Let's say prioritization. That's a better word. Could you speak a little bit to the proper prioritization of your family? Because isn't it possible to get a little over the top with it? Like your family is all that matters, and it's just like that's the only. It's
great.
Almost the only thing you focus on, but then also it can probably be under prioritized also. How did you guys think about that?
Well, I don't think we had some set thing. We were, you know, we just lived our lives, and but we try to be outward focused. I mean, we were serving in a church always, and started a nonprofit organization that was serving pastors. So we always had people in our home. Like, we would have people over for dinner, sometimes like 2 or 3 nights a week.
Oh, or wow. Like when we would go to Buena Vista, Colorado, if we were there for like, say 3 or 4 weeks, you know, we would have guests coming and going while we were there, visiting us while we were there.
Yeah, right on the trail with them.
Yeah, so the hospitality thing was a really big, that was something that we really valued.
It was never just like, you know, seclude our family and keep us, you know, separate from the world. Heavens, no. I mean, we were on soccer teams, and in the community, we were always, you know, I always volunteered in the schools, or Chad did.
I think too, like, this is, I don't know if Ray kind of prompted that idea in you, or it really resonates with me in the sense that where we go awry sometimes inside of our Christian understanding of our roles as parents is it gets disproportionately prioritized in that it's almost like an idol. Our kids and our family are. Yep. And you lose the plot, as they say. You lose the bigger picture of this is a part of something much larger. And when you get that reversed, that's again where that's the soil out of which, like, fear, you know, these kids are like almost an extension of me, and how well they do is a matter of my pride, my standing, my respectability in the community. I mean, everything after that is like Darwinian and dark. I mean, that just doesn't go well. So again, that proper perspective, yes, of keeping the big things big, you know, and really cultivating that. So the kids' life, I mean, they got older, it got really complicated in terms of scheduling, but they knew at any given time that we could trump that situation and call an audible and change, or we were going to stay and not go out, or they couldn't go out with friends or do X, Y, and Z. We're going to, so there was always that sense in which none of us was the center, and the kids certainly weren't. I mean, we brought them along,
Yeah.
That's right.
I wonder if that's where a little bit of the prioritization or the balance comes from is like, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is just like us serving and pulling them in, because I like that picture of them being pulled in and being engaged with us alongside our journey.
I think that's I don't know who kind of informed us to do that when we were young, just kind of get started as parents, but it's something that, again, maybe intuitively we just kind of sense. There was a sense in which I can show you, son or daughter, like something really beautiful in the world, something really powerful, something compelling. And so come along with me,
Exactly.
and see that.
And don't you think ultimately deep down, no one really wants to be the center of the world?
Yeah.
Because they just have this awareness like that's not going to work.
Well, it doesn't work.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think that I have memories of my dad playing catch with me. He loved softball, and I was in baseball some, and I'm pretty sure I have that memory. But most of my memories are like, I'm going with him on a delivery. I'm riding with him as he mows the yard. We're, God forbid, weeding the garden together. Like all this stuff. Because that when I think of my childhood, that is what I think about, was like I was being brought along by my parents. Whatever they were doing, when it made sense to me to come along with that, go to the shop.
Yeah.
On Saturdays with Dad. Like most of it was like they're just bringing me along with whatever they were doing.
And I think where it kind of goes in the direction is like we really enjoyed going with them into their things. So,
when they got older?
Yeah, as they got older, it's like,
okay.
Going to their soccer games or going to a concert with them or going to a movie that they wanted to go see, or like really being enthralled and curious, about what they were doing and supporting that. Again, there's a real sense of dignity there. It's dignifying, but it also shows that reciprocity. This goes both ways, and so it wasn't just always about me setting the tempo in that, because that's not a real depiction of the world,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that one of the things that might help us is a little bit of a shift in mindset, because I think our instinctual response about when Jackson has to go to football, or Lincoln needs to go to basketball, or Jericho needs to go to baseball, or back when they played soccer, which was a total joke, that it's like a calendar item. Like we got to go do this. They have to be here at this time, then they need to be picked up. And do you wait or do you come home and pick them back up? But it's like very tactical.
Yeah.
Like it's very like a to-do.
Well,
That's just our natural.
It is that.
Yeah, it is.
And it can be maybe something a little bit more than that.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
wondering, because like there was a couple times this winter where she and I went to pick up Lincoln or
Go to his
basketball game, because it was a Friday night, and we're pretty hardcore about blocking out Friday nights and only being together. And then we had fun. It was just like her and I, went
great.
to Lincoln's basketball game. So I wonder if that is an area that we could sort of maybe keep working on, as like a shift of focus there, less about like they need to be less about like the to do, and start to think a little bit more about like this is us going along with their thing.
Yeah. And I will say, our kids all played soccer. And so, there's a lot of carpooling, a lot of driving, driving around Texas. And honestly, you could look at that as like, oh my gosh, I would drive so much. But we had such good car time with our kids.
Yeah. Okay.
What a gift. They're stuck in a car with you for
Yeah.
4 hours.
Yeah.
You're letting them DJ, but then they start talking. It's great. So I'm very grateful for that time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like our middle son, he had a practice. At one point, he was practicing for more than a year, for a couple of years,
At least, yeah.
where it was like a one-way drive to his practice 3 nights a week was like an hour and 20-ish, 30 minutes.
Well, depending on traffic.
3
but yeah.
nights a week, an hour to an
And
hour.
his practice
one
So that was
started-
way?
one kid, and
His
we had
practice
3
started
that
at
were-
8
8 p.m.
8 p.m.
So this was indoor soccer?
No, it was like in Texas, so the season.
Oh my goodness!
So like you think about that, like some of the times he would sleep when we first get going because he was tired, but usually he'd start waking up, might do homework, but like a lot of times on the way home, you're talking about that practice session he just had. You're talking about that particular player on his team, how the coach was addressing him, or what the coach is doing with you, or you're listening to music together. And it wasn't that long ago that Noah, that's our middle son, that went on that. And as a parent, again, you're just like, and we told him like, hey, when you're done playing at this level, let us know, because this is really a huge pain, right?
Yeah.
Did you both go, or did your whole family
No,
go,
we
or
like
just
one of us
y'all?
would go usually,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, it was not.
We were having to get other kids to soccer too. So
Yeah,
it
so
was tag
sometimes
team
there would
for
be
sure.
like divide and conquer, yeah.
Yeah.
But that one was usually like one person, driving that far. And but Noah, just not too long ago, I think he sent me the track, a particular song on a Coldplay song album that he remembers us listening to.
Oh, that's cool.
During that time, and he just said, like, Dad, that time in the car going back and forth to Burroughs was the name of that park, was just really meaningful to me. I look back on that with a lot of fondness. And I mean that, that's what you hope for.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're trying to make the most of it. But it was that, that was just one of those moments where it does come back and you get a moment to reflect on that. But all of them had that,
Well, can I interject
Yeah.
for a sec? I mean, when speaking of driving kids to soccer and just getting a glimpse into their world, we carpooled with Amy a lot. We had our little carpool group that we did. So we'd meet at HEB, which is a great Texas grocery store. Anyway, whatever. And then, one of us.
Hey, by the way, everyone who's moving to Austin right now cannot stop talking about HEB.
Oh, it's
just
what is
only-
going on with HEB?
only we could get
Whatever.
Howard E. Butt's grocery store here.
Really?
Oh, it's amazing.
Everyone who goes there becomes like a huge fan, like instantly.
Oh, it's amazing.
Anyway,
We digress.
Sorry, yeah.
HEB, sorry.
But anyway, so we'd meet there, and then one of us moms. It was usually a mom, once in a while a dad, but would the girls. There would be about 4 or 5 girls all pile in the car, and
Preteen,
oh my gosh! By the way,
teenager.
it's amazing how bad preteen girls smell. Like they
After a
stink
soccer
so
practice.
bad.
Oh, I believe that.
Anyway, but just
Oh, I know how the boys smell. I hope it's not worse than that.
gross. Anyway, but hearing the girls interact and hearing how your own child is interacting with them in that situation, because then we would have conversations about that afterwards.
We capitalize on that.
Okay.
I mean, and it's hard. They're in that struggle of trying to navigate those friendships and where do they fit in, and that girl's being mean, and so and you get literally a front row seat to that. So I'm so grateful for those.
Yep.
All those drives.
The hour and 20 minutes is blowing my mind. Is Houston sort of like LA? Because that wouldn't be shocking to have someone live in LA and drive an hour.
I mean,
and 20
like,
minutes.
like
That's just how it
Huntsville,
is.
Alabama, what's an hour and a half from here?
Yeah.
I mean, people commute like to places like Huntsville, that kind of, in Houston.
Absolutely. You
Oh,
just
yeah.
Can
plan
you
to
imagine
drive
driving to Huntsville for soccer practice 3
Yeah.
nights a week?
Exactly.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? I
So-
mean, that was just what was happening there is, again, we were following all of them in kind of their natural progression. And we were, of course, do we have the time? Do we have the money? Can we make this commitment? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do it. You want to do this? Okay, we'll do it. It's like big deal. So all of them were doing that at various levels, and we all would talk about it. But again, the thing with soccer for us was never, I mean, none of them went on to play in college.
Okay.
But the thing that we always would say to them is soccer is a means to an end. Like, ultimately, no matter, even if you do go on and play at the highest level, this sport is, God's going to use this sport in your life, these moments, these teams, these players, these coaches, these situations to really teach you. And I want to be a part of that. I want to help you see that. You can share that stuff with us. And, I think in the end, they all still love the sport. They all still like to play. They like, to watch it on television, whatever. So it's not like they're disenfranchised with that reality.
Amy's playing intramural right
Yeah,
now.
I mean,
actually.
so
Oh, is she really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
But it's still the bigger thing was, like, they're always learning in those spaces, and and about themselves, where they fit relative to a team, so I know there's a lot of, people have mixed feelings about getting their kids involved in sports, and there's a lot of conversations that can be had about that. All I'm just trying to say is we decided to do that. And in doing so, we just tried to capitalize on that and really use those as lessons where you're creating conditions for them to really grow and learn about themselves and faith and others. Yeah.
And to just watch your kids love something.
Oh, it's amazing.
And be passionate about and, go all out. That's so fun. I miss that.
At what age did they start?
4 or 5.
Yeah, they started
Really
like
that
the little
young?
community league,
Yeah.
like YMCA stuff. But in our neighborhood there where we lived, there was a couple of clubs that once you got it to like 8, 9, 10, you were starting to like get a little bit more serious in terms of coaching and training. But then once they got into like preteen years, they were like actually on competitive teams, where it was a little bit more serious and a little bit more exacting and demanding.
Yep.
And then they played all the way through, high school and all that. So.
Was soccer advantageous to them in terms of any scholarships or no?
No, because they all decided at various levels, like, I'm not doing this in college.
I see.
Okay. Well, I think all 3 of them Amy, that's another story because we moved up here. But the boys both, I think they were probably both like juniors when they were like, I'm not going to play in college.
Yeah.
They could have. They
Okay.
could
Yeah.
have.
It was the thing where, like in Texas, there's not a lot of options for D1 schools to play men's soccer. And they were probably like, where I want to go to school, I don't want just soccer to be the dictate to that.
Yeah.
So I want to go choose a school I want to go to and not just be like, well, I can get a scholarship to play there.
Yeah, that makes sense. We were hanging out with good friends last night, and the guy said he thinks he learned more about life from high school football than school.
Yeah.
By the way, just because it's a free one, would you let your boys play high school football or no?
Man, I'm really glad they didn't want to do that.
They were small.
I mean, anatomically, they would have been really challenged in that area because I'm not big and they just weren't built like that. So I'm really thankful for that. I mean, they got hurt. They all got, different levels
Reese
of
had a pretty bad broken
break.
leg one time.
Yeah. Stitches.
Yeah, lots of stitches.
All that kind of stuff. But at football, yeah, I mean, that's pretty.
Broken legs, not, that's not like a life injury.
Yeah.
I know football is safer than it used to be. I don't know exactly where I stand on it right now. A few years ago, I was like, nope, not going to let them. Then it was like, yeah.
I mean,
not so sure. But
there's just
honestly,
not that many things that I would just be like totally prohibited. Like, just you can't do that. There's that's not a long list of things.
Okay.
That's one of the things we were talking about in this. We just didn't have a lot of like, no, you can't do that.
Okay.
There were a few times we laid down that kind of thing, but that was few and far between.
Just in general, you're saying? In general, you had very few no.
Yeah. And we would try to be like, instead of just saying a no, we'd be like, well, how about this? Or have you ever thought about that? Or think about this bigger picture, So we would try not to just throw the veil down and be like, no, you can't do that. Stop looking at that.
Yep.
Don't think about that.
I'm going to bring this up.
Yeah.
So when Amy was, I don't know, 4, whatever, however old she was in ballet and it was precious, and at the recital that spring, it was just so sweet. They're these sweet little girls doing their little ballet. And then the older girl, so it's like all the ages.
It's like a school. You're
do their performance. And then so we're sitting there and
Chad's
the older.
Sitting there.
Yeah. Eddie Chad's sitting there and the older girls come out and perform their dance. And Chad was like, nope. That is not happening.
That's not the track you want her on.
You're going to play soccer like your brothers. And
I mean, the chair and what they were doing with the chair.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And I was just like.
And so there were a few times in her growing up years where she was like, I want to dance. I want to do, hip hop and dance and whatever. And we were like, no.
She's probably listening to this.
Yeah.
And
and she knows. I mean, we had that conversation over. Not all the time, but it would come up once in a while. So we did say no.
Along the way, we would say no to. Just not very many things.
Yeah, I love that.
My early dad self of a dad of a daughter, that just like provoked something in me that was just, it was so clear.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, like, no, this is not going to happen.
Okay.
We're not doing this. This right here.
Okay, not doing that?
No. So it was like an easy decision right there.
That's funny. My niece is really good at ballet.
Ballet is cool.
I don't think I really understand.
What these girls were doing was not ballet.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, gotcha.
No, it was not. Amy's age group was ballet.
That
and
was
then
amazing.
They progressed to these other
They would matriculate through these
dance.
dance school like in like different
whatever modern
maneuvers
dance,
or
whatever.
whatever.
Gotcha.
It's like, oh my gosh.
Okay.
Thinking like walking on your toes and
Uh-huh.
twirling, but this is something else
Okay, is it
altogether.
different?
Yeah.
Okay.
The costumes, you know.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
What was the? Hey, do you remember what the Coldplay song was that Noah remembered?
No, if we keep talking, I'll just
You
go
should
through my
text us.
phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should text him and see. Coldplay is her legit
I
favorite.
probably know every Coldplay
Okay.
song.
Yeah, we listen to
love
Coldplay
Coldplay
so
song.
much.
For sure. I remember listening to a lot of Andrew Bell with Noah in the car.
Andrew.
Oh,
Bell.
really?
Oh, yeah, the ladder.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot of that. So, but yeah, we love Coldplay too.
Anything that comes to mind that you would take care not to do again, or maybe do different if you were going back and doing things over again?
I mean, this is kind of like in the conversation with us before this, we were talking about like in the realm of regrets. And I mean, the things probably that I would do differently is I would desire to have and want to have more patience and handle certain situations, better. And
Like patience at bedtime.
yes.
Sure.
We have patience at bedtime for 2 hours every single night. There's got to be a better way, dude.
So-
Gotta be a
end.
better
It does
way.
end.
It does. I mean,
Oh,
but
man.
Hang on.
yeah, I would say those are the things. I'm so grateful that there's nothing that ever happened between us as husband and wife that I regret or like wish that we could go back and change. I mean, I'm thankful that God has given us the ability to navigate our difficulties and challenges in a way that, didn't result in anything massive and major. But yeah, along the way, you can remember, like as a parent, like losing your cool, being impatient, just losing perspective, taking that out on them. And those are probably the things that I,
So basically, we regret being sinners.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I this is something that for me, like that I had to learn about myself was that like if the kids would get hurt, like if we were on a walk or riding bikes and they would get hurt, fall over, scrape their knee, whatever, I would get irritated. I could definitely feel myself getting irritated in those moments. Too. Yeah. And of course, as I sit here and talk about it, I'm like, well, that's, where's the compassion? Where's that virtue, right? And that when someone's hurt and then the person who's coming to help them is kind of upset with them, that's a bad vibe.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. And, and so, yeah, right. And of course the kids, they're like, what? I don't understand. Like I'm hurt and you're angry that I fell off my, whatever. But, Meeka was very persistently and kindly like reflecting that back to me. Like, why do you get this way? And I really had to like just do some examination. And what I finally came up with is this realization that I am so dedicated back to what does it mean to be a parent. I'm so dedicated and focused on their safety and well-being. Like there's a part of my identity as a man that's really wound up in the success of that. So when that happens, even those little spaces, it's like in my own kind of sinful distortion, I feel all this shame and like I have failed in my role here. And what they get is that self-loathing coming back to them. Mm-hmm. They see that coming back at them. They feel that, which is terrible. That's not a good way to parent. And for me, like just that confession, like even on my very best day, I can't give them everything they need, and the kind of the way that I just kept sort of working this out in my own self was like, even on my very best day, I'm a lousy version of Jesus,
Right.
And so it's like, eventually I realized my own limitation there as a parent. Like I can't always keep you safe. And when you get hurt, instead of taking that personal and seeing that through the lens of my failure, which is a really selfish way to process that, I need to have compassion and come alongside of you. What do you need from me? How can I help? Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. That's just like my own work and as a person, and, you know, God working on me. And so I think I'm thankful that was happening when the kids were young, because when they get older, that's even more, I feel that it's even more pronounced, mm-hmm. that struggle.
The struggle of realizing that you can't make them be perfect.
Yeah, it's like
is that what you're saying?
I mean, essentially, it's like as the older, the older the kids get, the less control you have over more things. And so, as you're losing control, as you're realizing the facade of control is falling away, what are you left with? You're left with, you know, ways of influencing them, being connected with them, being present with them. But if you're still holding on to, I want to control for these outcomes, I mean, you're just going to be a miserable person.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I noticed recently that the things that are bothering me is because I thought it should be done better. And then I was thinking, well, if they did it better, would that be good enough? And then I'm like, no, it needs to be perfect, basically. And then I was thinking, this is literally what I was thinking to myself, is like, I've been chewing about this in my mind a little bit, because I've been sort of like making, I don't know, just processing it and like knowing that it's not right, but acknowledging it like it's the thought that I have, which is like, you got to be perfect or people die. Mm. That's what I've been thinking. But most of the time, that's not the case. That is the case sometimes, but most of the time, no one's going to die, you know? But it's like this internal thing. You got to be perfect or people die.
Yeah. There's like in counseling, which is what I do, there's a school of thought called internal family systems, IFS. And the internal family idea there is that you have these different parts. All of us have these different parts that make up who we are as a person. And at certain times, in certain situations with certain people, those different parts become more pronounced. You know, maybe like you have a part that's a real protector of yourself and others. And sometimes that part carries a burden that's not realistic. It's not rational. And it can actually drive them to become a really lousy version of yourself. And so really becoming aware of how certain situations elicit and evoke responses kind of out of these parts of you. In these situations, this part of me really comes out, you know, is kind of what that school of thought. And it helps you to really understand, like, these parts of me is definitely a part of who I'm as a whole person. God's redeeming and saving every part of me, as it were. And so all of those are coming into submission and salvation. And again, it's like a great thing to be a protector of your family. That's a high value. You should aspire to that. But there's a way of going about doing that that's Christ-centered, that is still has humility in that strength, you know?
Yep.
And that's something I had to, you know, as a dad, really had to learn to do. And, you know, unfortunately, you're learning to do that in places where the people you love are the people you're hurting and you're learning with. It's just sort of tied up in the whole process.
Yep. I first heard about internal family systems a few years ago through Tim Ferriss's podcast. Yeah. And it was very helpful for him. Mm-hmm. And as he processed childhood trauma and stuff. And is the big idea there that internally you have various almost like personalities or like a family inside, and it depends what you're encountering. It affects different members of the family inside of you. Is that where it gets
that's kind of the idea of it? Yeah, that's in the external family. In that school of thought would be basically what you call your family. So your immediate family, your extended family. Okay. But the internal family is, because the idea is like in like how a regular family, an external family, everybody kind of plays different roles and parts. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to blend those in a really healthy way where people are loved and appreciated for the things that they bring. You're kind of doing that with these different parts of yourself. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the premise of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a really interesting way of thinking about it. And it kind of helps you to generate as a parent, like just the sense of compassion for yourself. You know, just you have to, I have this part of me. Sometimes it really gets the best of me. It's not always great. Thank you for being patient with me. I need to be patient with myself. I'm still learning and growing. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you're kind of blending, bringing that hope and faith and love to bear in all those different intricacies of your personality and who you are. Yeah.
So are you saying the internal family is like the negative parts of you, or not necessarily?
No, the famous statement in IFS, in that school of thought, is there's no bad parts. There's actually a book called No Bad Parts. And so the idea is in the sense of like, they're mostly like not functioning very well. They might be stuck, there's like in our life, we developmentally, we might get stuck at certain sections in our life and different struggles and trauma. And it brings out certain parts of us that kind of are underdeveloped and they're not really blended well in our whole being. Right. And so part of the therapy is to really, to do work with those parts of ourselves so that, Christ in us really is manifesting in all these different aspects. I have this really gentle, caring, compassionate part. I have this really strong, protective, demonstrative part, and really bringing a balance and a whole to that, through the work that God's doing in our life.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really fascinating. It wasn't developed by a Christian, thinker or therapist or counselor. But a lot of, I know a lot of believers who are really good therapists who use IFS, in their work as counselors. It can be really helpful.
In my internal family, I have this really nasty, passive-aggressive, cynical, negative aunt who speaks way too much. I got to do some work on that.
Yeah, no.
I don't have any of those in my extral family, but my internal family.
You do? Yeah.
Yeah. She's loud right now. All right. How about this prioritization between protecting your kids and then versus, which is, I don't even know if you could really put it like this, but we're thinking in particular, like, how do you think about protecting your kids versus preparing them for the real world?
Engage, talk with them. We would talk about all the things at dinner, or in the car. Nothing was off limits with our kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
think that, and again, I think the protection. If you look at like the book of Proverbs, the father is teaching. He's imparting wisdom, right? He's teaching the son, how to think, how to engage the world. He's not teaching him necessarily, don't ever do that and don't do that and don't do that. You know what I'm saying? He's teaching them, like he's warning him, like there are these certain people and there's these circumstances and these kinds of folks, be aware of these situations. He's imparting wisdom, a way to see the world. So again, to me, it's less about prohibition and more about really instilling wisdom.
Yeah, just like conjuring up memories of at the dinner table, the kids would often, especially if there was something going on, in the world that was a big event or politically or whatever, and they would come home and start saying, well, so-and-so at school said this or so-and-so said that, and their parents have this opinion. So it just was like, wow, what an entryway into a really great conversation to, explore those different ideologies or, what we believe about, it was an invitation, really.
Yeah. So, I kind of want to make them, I want them to be, I don't know the right word about it, but safe to go out into the world so that they can be in spaces and absorb different views and hear things that, I know my mom and dad don't think that way. I don't think that's how we see this, but I can be in this room with you and I can have this conversation and, then they knew they can come home and talk and, share ideas. Process. And so that's really what we were committed to. There were obviously like certain movies, at certain ages, music, environments, that we would just be like, no, you're not doing that. Like, that's not a good idea,
right.
So there was obviously, there were things that we would, but I'm just saying that was a relatively short list,
Okay.
And also, I guess we are lucky. Our kids weren't asking to do crazy things. They weren't hanging out with kids that for the most part, that were getting into a lot of trouble. So, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember that being an issue for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, I know they had friends that struggled. I know our kids
Absolutely.
struggled,
Yeah,
you know,
our kids-
and so like they, you know, I knew that was going on, and they were, you know, kind of running into some of the, especially as they get into middle school and high school, you know, some of the struggles there. And that's, again, you're kind of in that space where you're trying to influence, and you can't really control a whole lot, but you can really influence and be compassionate and be present there for, you know, so.
Navigating as you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I think
it's like I don't think it would be wise to say, well, we're just never, you know, you're never going to do this. As a parent, we're never going to. It's like, you can't do that.
there's just not that many things, that goes really well on.
So you were focused less on protecting them from a whole lot of stuff and more on walking with them and talking with them about what they were engaging with, about what they were experiencing.
Yeah, Jesus said that it's not what goes into man that contaminates him, it's what comes out. And to me, in a lot of ways, like this idea of like, I wanted to almost create a filtering system. We wanted to like give them a way of thinking and seeing and processing so that they're going to be bombarded with information. That's inevitable. They're just going to get out into the world and be metabolizing stuff that's like, oh gosh, you know. So I wanted them to have this sort of spiritual, internal kind of, again, virtue framework where now you can like, I've taken this in, what am I going to do with that? How does that come out? And so we didn't have any rules, you know, like, I mean, there was a time in my life where it was like, when I was growing up, where my parents, you know, it was like a threat. Like you can't listen to anything but Christian music, and not even just Christian music, but certain kinds of Christian music. And
we had that too.
Yeah. And so, you know, that was just like an impossible, it just creates this really, again, the property lines get really small there, and the chances of you wandering off are really good. And so, it's like, I mean, if you're just trying to gin up a lot of tension and controversy in the house, I guess you can set those kinds of rules, but I'm not sure that's the best way of going about it. I mean, you know, we were always listening to music and, you know, taking that in, taking them to concerts. We had friends that were musicians, so they would get to know them. And so they, you know, music was definitely a big part of our lives growing up and still is. And so, you know, they all love music and all kinds of different music, you know. And so we were always just trying to kind of cultivate that curiosity with the world around them, and just, make them resilient to go out into the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot, because that is the most durable, most robust way to really prepare them. Because if you're just protecting them from a whole lot of things, eventually they're going to encounter it, right? And then if they haven't been prepared for it, that can cause real problems.
Yeah.
Actually, we see this a lot in maybe the most notable or the most obvious or the most clear is the Amish. When they have like the Rumspringa time, and they'll go crazy. You know, I mean, it's like it's like a whole nother world, you know, and they just sort of go nuts.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but that's, I think, an example of that.
Yeah. I think that's kind of just human nature.
Yeah. And two, like this is like, we like to hear this maybe in part selfishly, because like that's our philosophy also. That's how we're doing it with our kids. It's our general MO. And also sort of like just talking about stuff. Like they're on this kick right now where Aria, I know the S word, you know, I know the F word. She probably shouldn't know that one, but it's like, oh,
the F word isn't even the F word to her.
Oh, really?
It's something else.
Oh,
She'll
okay.
say,
Well, great.
I know the S word, and it's
like, well,
OMG,
what?
You know?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just be like, oh, you mean shit? You know what I mean? It's like, what's the S word? Like, you may as well just say it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that big a deal, you know? So sort of just like demystifying it a little bit, and then talking through it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's that, to me, again, it's just back to like, you're building virtue, you know, and you're building that internal structure that gives wisdom and direction that then will lead to values that align with those, beliefs and virtues. So values. Yeah.
But how about music? So Lincoln likes hip hop, and I think he's getting it from school a little bit, or some of his buddies, and so he likes it. And I didn't encounter hip hop until later in life, so like there's some that I like
an Amish rapper.
Yeah. Weird Al Yankovic. Surely you've heard that song, man. That's anyhow. So I don't feel like I can share his natural. It seems to be like a natural gravitational pull towards that type of music. And there's a lot of explicit language in that.
Yeah.
So how would you think about that? How did you navigate that? Where'd you set the boundaries with, say, music with your kids?
I left this one up to Meeka. She was in charge of.
Wow. I mean, if they were young, we listened to all kinds of music. Probably I was not listening to a lot of hip hop, but Chad did take the kids to a Chance the Rapper concert, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. But if the kids were young, if there was a bad word here or there, whatever. But if it was really explicit and with themes of violence or whatever, I would not be down with that.
Okay.
But I will say, as they get older, you don't actually have control over what they listen to, and our kids, at least a couple of them, love it.
I think all
they
of them.
love hip hop and all of that explicit stuff. So
Okay.
this is kind of funny. Well, maybe not funny. I don't know. Amy has made me a workout playlist, and it's all, it's and I will listen to it sometimes, and I will work out. Chad, I put my AirPods in, I'll work out to it, and I'm like, but it's a way that I can, okay, this is what she's enjoying right now, so I'll listen and be like, but some of it I actually surprise myself,
Yeah, it was funny. I went to that. I took Amy to that Chance concert, because I think.
Was it just Amy?
Well, Reese and Noah were already there.
Oh.
They were already going to go. So I was like, yeah, Amy, I'll come with you. And
She was probably 14.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, you go to the concert, there's, there might be an opening act, and then Chance is going to come out and play for, 2 hours maybe, do his thing. And there's 6 DJs that play one after the other before he ever. So I'm just like, what time is this thing going to end? It was it just went on and on and on. And of course, the longer it went, the more the air filled,
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's just a whole environment,
Okay.
But I have to say, the show was unbelievable. I mean, Chance the Rapper was a fantastic show. So
yeah, I'll bet. So you
totally immersed myself in that.
Yeah. Okay. So you would have pretty big boundaries with music, and let them follow their interests and enjoy what they enjoy. But if has themes of violence or just pervasive, explicit language, then you would have tried to guide them away from that.
Well, when they're young, your kids are
Yeah,
young,
I would
so we would definitely have
when they were
been
that,
but they were kind of listening to what we were listening to back then.
We were kind of.
I guess they didn't have iPhones and all that jazz.
That's
back
true.
Then.
Yeah, when they were that age,
they didn't have as much access.
So that was I think some of their artistic tastes sort of reflected ours, and that was very much a part of their life. And so, but where they've taken all that,
Right.
we still all can definitely agree on a playlist or songs or music. We all still kind of can get there and enjoy the same thing. But yeah, they have their own taste. But that really began to emerge maybe more so once they got into high school.
Okay.
And so it really started taking off in that way. And so then again, it was just a point of conversation. You're always just, I like music. I consume music, love to listen to all kinds of music. So if they were into a particular artist, say if they were hip hop or something like that, I would usually end up listening to it just out of curiosity what they're listening to. And I'm like, oh, that's actually, this Kendrick Lamar album is really good. This is, what's he saying? The compelling story he's telling, the, way he's processing his world, his emotions. It's pretty powerful, And so it's a real point of conversation, with the kids. And
I've brought up to Amy, with, just, I think maybe she was home and we were listening to, I don't know if we were in the gym or what, but listening to some of her music, and it was just like, it was a lot of bad words and all, whatever, cussing. And I was like, now, Amy, just think about like when we get in the car and we're listening to my 80s music. Like, think about when you have kids.
Yeah.
And are you going to be listening to them with your kids or this with your kids? She was like, probably not.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. She's like, the realization of it is probably not something she's going to want to expose her own kids to.
In the carpool line.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Spilling out of the minivan.
Another thing we wanted to ask you guys about was, we feel like right now with Lincoln, we have the ability to sort of control to some degree who his close friends are. And I think primarily we're thinking, I mean, when you think about the levers to pull on that, it's where you live, it's the church you go to or not, and the school primarily. So I think for us, we're kind of thinking of the school thing mostly right now because, where he goes to school does have a big impact on like who his friends are.
Sure.
And so he's going to a charter school right now. It's a public school. It's fine, probably great academically, but we're just noticing that with him in particular, we could keep sending him down this path, and we feel like maybe if we do, he may not be building a sort of potential lifelong network of friends. So it might be fine, to graduates and then, but then probably won't be doing a lot of life with many of them. We could be wrong. That's just our sense. Or we could like have him change schools possibly and put him in an environment where, he has maybe a better opportunity to establish like a lifelong network of friends or a small group of friends. And that was definitely my experience. Like I went to a very small church school and, there were 6-8 of us guys, all roughly in the same stage of life. We might have been across various grades or whatever, but dude, we had a ton of fun, man. I mean, we ran the town, like we had a lot of fun. And then we were in the youth group together and, just had a lot of good, I don't know why we had so much clean fun. We didn't really, we just had a lot of good, hearty fun. And, one of those guys was here last week, one of my best friends. And like, so it's hard to picture having a school experience where you don't have, 3, 4, 8 buddies to really like stay in touch with. So how did you think about that?
Wow.
Well, can I just add into that? He's really wanting community. So he has community here in the neighborhood to some extent. And then, there are some kids here who have a really great community in their school, and he went in on it. And so he told me outright, just I think this last week, he was just like, I just want some good friends, like some good school friends. So it's a struggle for him, and I feel like we're kind of struggling through like how to make that happen for him, or how could we, or what would it look like?
What school? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What school are the friends in the neighborhood going to? Is it accessible to you?
Yeah, it's a Christian school. It would be probably not a viable option for this next year, because one of the things that we learned pretty quick about Nashville private schools is they're very expensive.
Very expensive.
Very expensive. Like 25 to 30 grand for grades 3, 4, 5, like is not uncommon.
I know.
It's kind of like this wasn't a thing where I grew up, man.
Not where we.
So
I mean, our kids went to public schools all the way through, and I would be just so hard pressed to encourage any family to get into some sort of financially precarious position at this point, like elementary, middle, high school, to for their education. That to me is a big question mark.
Okay.
Thankfully, we were in good school districts. I mean, so
we
grateful for that.
When Amy finished here, she graduated from Centennial in Williams County, and she really liked that school, and it was
pretty
kind of
diverse,
small and diverse, and
she really liked
had a great experience there. So, and all of them have gone on to, they all have had great academic, you know, in their college and post-college space.
I would say our kids also, they had school friends, but then they would also have friends through sports, through soccer. But I mean, I remember times where, I remember specifically with Noah, I feel like we're talking about him a lot, but I remember him being in high school and really longing for really good friends at school that were believers. And that was like a really deep desire of his. And he didn't feel like he had that. And I mean, so, you know, we obviously prayed about that for him. And his last couple of years in high school, I mean, God just came through. He did, like, and
yeah, he had that little Bible study.
He started a Bible study.
He started hosting a bunch of people at our house.
Oh, wow. With his school
he
friends?
plays guitar and
Okay.
somebody would read the Bible. And
yeah, they would break up the girls and guys. We'd have like, and we would be shunned to our bedroom.
Okay.
And they would take
They would sort
over.
of take over.
There'd be like
Okay.
25 kids at our
No
house.
way.
And yeah,
Yeah,
like
he
it
would
was-
he just decided, well, I'm going to go do this myself. If I can't find this, I'm just going to do it
he's
myself.
going to create it. So kids would come. It was really, yeah, it was really sweet. So
But I think there were times where all three of the kids definitely struggled feeling lonely, you know? And again, that's like, I mean, that's something that I can identify with. I mean, that's not like, you know, that's not a disease. I mean, it's just like a thing that we struggle with existentially as people in the world. So again, it's a learning opportunity. It's like, how do we navigate this, you know? And then, you know, academically, they were all doing well in their respective, in their schoolwork, and they finished their high school studies really well and went on to, like I said, and did well and are doing well in college and whatnot. But so for us, we didn't, in Houston, we didn't really live in an area where private schools were that big of a deal. Very, very few people did that in the neighborhood we lived in.
Okay.
And then when we moved up here, it was like, wow, this whole private prep Christian academy thing is just like kind of off the chain. It's really
Yeah, it is.
crazy.
It's a big scene. Yeah.
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 And we have good friends that send their kids into those schools, and they're great kids, and they apparently are getting really great educations. But I'm certain that had we lived here,
we
wouldn't
couldn't
have done that. We couldn't have done
even
it.
if we wanted to.
It's like-
And
There's no even like, yeah, and I would have not mortgaged our future financial wherewithal and well-being just to get our kids like in some sort of philosophical worldview kind of, I just want them to get a solid education and they can build on that, you know.
Okay.
and
I'll take care of their like interior world, you know.
Okay. Yep.
So
yeah, and they're getting more realistic, real life experience in a public school. I think we kind of veered from that other question about friendships, but
yeah.
but I mean, that's real life, like in a public school, you know. I mean that the private, we actually don't have experience firsthand with the private school, but I imagine it's pretty sheltered and sweet. Like I'm sure it's wonderful, but you know, if you have the means, great. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
We just didn't.
That
wasn't
never an
like
option.
a choice. We didn't really have that card to play. So
Okay.
it was just like, how do we be good parents to them and help them with their friend groups and navigate those spaces in these space. And I think in terms, I know there's a lot of talk right now, obviously in this area about curriculum and what's being taught and all that. And I can't really imagine where I would have been as worked up about all that, you know. And
if you had kids in school
Exactly.
right now, based on what you know their curriculum is, you can't
Yeah.
imagine being that worked up about it.
Yeah, I think I would be still plugged in at the level we've been talking about, like, you know, influencing them, teaching them, investing in them, helping them learn how to think and process ideas, you know, that maybe are counter to how we see and believe about what we see and believe about the world and ourselves. So
Yeah.
So I would have stayed really engaged there, and I'd imagine that's how we would have navigated that.
Yeah.
So
Remember we homeschooled one year?
we did homeschool one year.
Okay.
And we did it because the kids would come home like saying, what a waste of time. This, they were always waiting on, whatever. And we were busy, like Chad was pastoring a church downtown. So we were always driving downtown Houston and soccer. And anyway, so we were like, you know what, let's homeschool. And we just pulled all the kids. This was before Amy started school. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie, but it was great. Like we really got to do so many fun things as a family and take advantage of all the great opportunities there are in Houston for learning outside of a classroom. So that was great.
That was a great year.
Why'd you go back?
So it's funny. We had said when we did it that we'll do it for 2 years and then, decide what to do. Well, Reese, he's our oldest. And we had homeschooled him his 5th grade year. And he was like the responsible firstborn, conscientious, good, kid, follows all the rules. And one day,
as far as we know.
Yeah, as far as we know. Ignorance is bliss. But no, one evening at dinner in the spring that year, he was like, just like announced out of the blue, I think I want to go to middle school. We're like, why?
Have you heard about this place? It's terrible.
He was like, I want a locker and a schedule. And like, he just wanted that experience. So we're like, really? Okay, well, let's, pray about it. And Noah, our second one, he was like, I don't want to go back to school. No way. And so anyway, we just kept discussing it and, came back to like, you know what? Why would we not let him have that experience if he's a good kid? It's not like we're trying to shelter him from anything.
Okay.
And, so it was basically like, well, if Reese is going in, no, you're going back. Because I'm not going to just keep one kid home. And then Amy was starting kindergarten. So
I'm imagining us having this conversation now around the dinner table and what they all would be saying to Reese right now. Oh, since Reese wants to go back, we all have to go back. Yeah,
we have one of those too.
Yeah, exactly.
We have one of those too. That's funny.
But I will say, I mean, having done it for a year and then making the decision as a family to go back in, it really made us appreciate, our schools and we did not have license to complain anymore. It was like we did it. We had the opportunity, and we could have kept him out, but it's like, nope. This is the decision we made. So let's.
And they all thrived.
The best we can. They all did. Great.
Yeah, they all did great from there on out. Really, honestly, they did really good academically and socially, and just navigating those spaces.
Yeah, but so homeschooling is always an option.
Yeah, well, it's really not for us. So that was at the end of the first year. You were going to do 2 years, but then you just did 1 year.
Yeah,
you're saying then they went back in. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as to the curriculum, I've actually I don't know that we've encountered one single thing that we have a major concern with, or to be honest, a concern with.
Yeah. And I've really looked into, especially Lincoln's stuff, that at the first year he was there especially, and I was actually pleasantly surprised, at the lack of things that I thought might have been there. But
yeah, we have no issue with the curriculum. Our elementary school is legit awesome. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, the teachers are, it's really great. I mean, it'd be hard for me to imagine that at our elementary school, them having a better experience paying $25,000 a year. Honestly, I think it's about as good as it gets, and it's free. Yeah. I feel great about that. Lincoln School, we've just not bumped into an issue. Apparently there's some things around, maybe some of the CRT stuff that's not allowed in Tennessee that might be allowed in some other states or whatever. Like it's all state specific or even like district. Maybe it's even has some differences. But as it turns out, the podcast releasing tonight was with Dr. Nate Miley, who was the principal at our elementary school for a few years, and he crushed it so much. Now he just got hired by Christ Pres as their head of middle school.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I had him on last week talking about school and stuff. And, he was mentioning that, he was in the public school system, so he's a fan. And he said Metro public school system is great for the most part. And But yeah, I think he mentioned some of the stuff that parents, and I think it was particularly Williamson County that were having an issue with like some of the books. And like the one book I read, it was like, we read it, I don't know, 20 times a few years ago when Jackson was learning to read. I mean, there's no issue with that book.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like some of these people are seeing, the angle they're coming from. Maybe they're seeing something I'm not seeing, but yeah, we don't have an issue with the curriculum.
That's great.
At the schools that we've been at. But I think just noticing maybe, that friend thing in particular, and then maybe also a little bit the cultural influence, and just trying to navigate how much of that we are cool with as parents, or so I think that's where that question was coming from.
I mean, one of the things I know that you guys do have, because we were there with you at Emmanuel, I mean, just that space that, where the teaching they're hearing from the front, the leadership in a church like that, it's such a great environment to really be marinating as a child, and learning about who you are as a person in Christ and your faith. And again, that's such a powerful antidote to any possible idea that's counter to that. I mean, they're really steeped in that environment that's very compelling.
Yeah.
And so for them to move out into the world with that teaching that's being, also you giving them that as well. Yeah, it's like that's really powerful, and going into that space, finding friends, keeping friends, building community, that wisdom will come through.
I have a thought about the friendship thing. I mean, for me personally, and I know I've shared this with my kids when they were, feeling lonely or left out or whatever. It's like, be a friend, if, I don't know, we got to get outside of ourselves, quit waiting for somebody to call us, but reach out, when you're feeling lonely, or if there's a particular person that, Lincoln would want to be a good friend to, or that you see would be a good friend, say, hey, let's invite so-and-so over, what about, have you ever connected with him, or, just try to encourage that too, because it's easy to feel like, we get where we feel left out or pity party, I mean, I'm speaking personally.
Yeah, I think even as adults that happens.
Yeah,
and so
sure.
it's, I think we have a better handle on that to a certain extent, but it's like, I'm beginning to see him struggle through that. And I'm like, I want that for you so bad because I want it too. I have it, but I want it for him too. And so, just watching him struggle through that is hard.
Yeah. That's just a huge statement. Watching your child struggle, and again,
doesn't get easy.
I believe that,
and not like being able to solve for that struggle or solve the problem. That is just a real test of fortitude and faith for a parent, no matter what it is. Especially when it comes to their friends, and that space. That's a really tough thing to walk alongside your child as they suffer in those friendship spaces. That's a big thing.
Yep. How about pulling your kids in or engaging with your kids when you're in sort of a season of depletion, or even, what would you say? Depletion. I don't want to say brokenness. That's not quite what I'm after.
Like fatigue, exhaustion.
Maybe just like when you're not doing so well yourself personally. What's that?
A struggle.
Yeah. You're struggling personally as a person.
Yeah.
Because, this is one of the things I've noticed about myself is like when my respect for myself is down, then I don't engage as good with my kids.
Oh, 100%.
Because like why I sort of want to remove myself, because if I'm not respecting myself, why should they?
100%.
And so any thoughts around kind of continuing to engage with your kids when you're not in the best spot personally?
Wow. I mean, sometimes you just need some space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot to be said too for just maintaining some discipline in your life to where you can get up and keep going and engage with them. And
I think one of the things that probably I would say we did well in this area is our physical health has always been a really big priority to us individually.
Was it that way before you met each other?
Yeah,
or did you?
pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of like a lifelong thing.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I mean, there was a point, like, the kids were definitely in our life, and I was really in a stressful situation, and I was like, I can't just keep waking up and going down there and doing that and coming home. It's going to really catch up with me. So I've got to start really getting even more serious about this, very regimented. So I started creating these, rhythms that I was living inside of. So I guess to answer the question, how would I continue or what would I do in those seasons where I felt depleted, is I trusted the system that we kind of created health-wise, live inside those spaces, maybe occasionally take a little bit more time and going away or, getting time with a friend or whatever, seeking out counsel, that kind of thing. But really creating an overall pace and a rhythm that we lived inside of, that we knew would come back around and rejuvenate us.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So the kids would see us doing that. So it wasn't like they saw us kind of going like up and down inside these commitments of health and wellness. And it was a pretty consistent, and I wasn't doing it to be consistent for them. I was doing it because it was how I was replenishing myself.
Yeah.
And Meeka was doing that as well. And so that's probably, if I think about that question, that's probably what it actually looked like. And I mean, then there are days where you're just like, look, it was hard and long and difficult. And the older they got, you'd share a little bit more, and then like, you guys, can you just give me some space? Can you go outside and play? Can you, let mom and I just have the room or whatever, And so, there are definitely moments like that, but, creating that space where you're just like, if I believe in the system, if I can stick with this, and not lose my cool or be too much impatience or short-sighted, I can come out on the other side of this maybe,
Yep. And that's one of the many reasons why I personally find a whole lot more value in habits than goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because essentially what you're doing with habits is you're building a system
that's exactly
that you can
right.
fall back on.
Exactly.
And I don't want to, poo-poo goals, because I definitely have some friends where it's like, they're doing this for a month and that for a month. And I'm like, man, I really respect that, because I couldn't be able to quit coffee for a month, But they're like, do these various goals, but I've just found a lot more value with habits.
Yeah.
Building a system you can sort of fall back on.
That's definitely how we lived.
But the one thing I want to ask right now, which we can come back to this thought, but why have you guys valued your physical health so much? Because you definitely do. I mean, you guys get after it even now, or particularly now.
Especially maybe.
No, I think always has been that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've made your physical health a priority, and being outside is a big part of that.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that? Why have you done that?
I mean, I just really enjoy it.
Yeah. Really.
I mean,
I've always loved to move. And
I mean, I found it to be really helpful for my overall mood, my outlook. I mean, the more I think about this, the older I get, it really, when you suffer inside of a workout, it really sort of puts you in your place. You really
Yes,
get that,
no doubt.
that
and it's
small,
good for the mindset.
yeah, it's like good for your
it's,
mind. So I definitely, that's just always been something that's,
I mean, we both grew up playing sports, and you know, so that was it's just always been something that we valued.
But also, it's not like, I don't ever want it to come off as like it's easy, like it's just automatic. I mean, when it's cold here and, it's time to go for a run and it's 7:00 in the morning, or,
we do have a treadmill.
We do have a treadmill, but it's like, it's like I still have to talk myself into things.
Yep.
Still be like, no, you need to do this. Just get your stuff out, get on the bike, go. You're going to be glad you did it. So I still have to kind of bend my will around at times and get it to do what I want it to do. But I mean, the payoff is usually there,
Yeah.
So,
no doubt. I think it's a somewhat underdeveloped area in the common experience of the Christian faith in America.
Yeah.
Well,
There's just like always been like in the West, there's always been this dichotomy between body and spirit,
right.
And so the body, so I think part of the recovery in that and the true teaching from Scripture is that our body is a gift from God that we're given to steward. And we really are holistic beings, our mind, our body, our spirits. And when we cultivate health in all those areas, we're really going to thrive for the glory of God. And, so when I'm really enjoying the gifts that God's given me, I just joy, wisdom, peace, all that stuff is coming.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And I think it probably would be, weird if you emphasize it too much, say from the pulpit. I don't know if that's really the place.
Yeah.
But,
part of the problem is that physical, like taking care of yourself physically in our culture is also, there's a lot of inappropriate talk around aesthetics, like beauty.
Sure.
And so that's where this kind of goes off the rails, is this idea like I'm a better, more beautiful person when I do this. Like that's, I really am looking for like fitness and health, well-being,
I'm looking for a good checkup at the doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Had one today.
Exactly. Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
Great. Did you get your blood drawn?
Yeah. I did. I haven't got those results.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So that's, that's the kind of thing for me. It's like, it's more about health. It's not like, it's not a rule around the aesthetic.
Yeah.
And the concept of beauty, some abstract concept of beauty.
Yep.
It has more to do with just wellness and health.
No doubt. The amount of times that when I was going going into the office earlier than going out midway through the day to hit a workout, where particularly if I get like a cup or two of coffee in my body, I feel anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of times where I'm driving to the gym feeling like everything is wrong with this world, and then go just lay it all out for an hour and driving home, and all of a sudden, or back to the office, and all of a sudden everything's fine.
Yeah.
Countless times.
True.
And for me, the physical is the absolute lead domino on pretty much everything else. Like I eat better when I'm going to the gym consistently.
No, that's true. Yeah.
I'm in a better, I do it as much for my mental state as my physical state.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not be able to not go suffer physically basically every day. I just wouldn't be able to do it. Some people might be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to.
Doesn't always have to involve suffering, though, too. You can do something that's
Take your word for it.
He suffers
every single day.
every single day. Oh,
Well,
my.
I mean,
unless you have to scale a little bit.
No, I mean, you suffer to the extent that you want to that day.
Yeah.
Like the way we're big fans of CrossFit. I finally got her into it a couple years ago. Lincoln just joined 2 months ago. So now we go to 6 a.m. and I'm liking that.
Yeah.
It sets the day great. And he's always up, always ready, never complains.
That's amazing.
That's
He's all in. He wanted to do it last fall, but sometimes he gets his mind on stuff and then he like obsesses about it and then he does it for 2 weeks and then totally forgets about it. And
12,
I wanted to make
he's
sure
11.
it was going to stick.
Yeah.
And he was working out by himself on the back porch for January and February at 6 a.m. in the snow. Didn't matter. He was out there.
Awesome.
And so I was like paying attention. So we got him a membership at our gym and go. But and that's been really great. It's been great for a relationship. It feels like almost like a rite of passage.
That's great.
Like it feels like if we were Native Americans on this land, about this time he would start to go with me hunting,
gathering.
but that's not really a thing anymore. So it's like, all right, come with me to the gym.
That's really good.
And you can suffer and you can see me suffer. We'll do it together. It feels good. But my only philosophy with it in terms of like you don't have to suffer every day is show up, use what you got.
Yeah.
Because some days you have more, and other days like, nope, there's nothing there. So you just use what you got. That's my only kind of rule on that. All right, what else?
Good question.
Yes. I definitely want to ask this. So in the case of someone having, let's say, a less than ideal relationship with maybe their parent or parents, how could someone be sure not to just go ahead and pass that same area of brokenness along to their kids?
Well, that's kind of the work I do as a counselor.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of my bread and butter. There's a lot of that, every day in the office, you're just history, origin is always kind of coming into focus in terms of the present, the future. So
Awareness.
Yeah, awareness is definitely. I mean, people ask me, should everybody go to counseling? Everybody go to counseling, and I always say everybody should live an examined life. So most of the time, you need help to do the examination, and so whatever that is for you, a pastor, a counselor, a coach, a friend that's really intentional. So seek to live an examined life, and part of the examination is being aware of your history, and so, I do a lot of story work with people, a lot of, outlining their story, understanding their past, and bringing up things maybe they've never talked about or seeing things in a new light. So opening yourself up to that actually can help a great deal in the proper filtering of your history into your present. Because it all is going to come. It's going to influence your present, and that you shouldn't apologize for that. That's uniquely what you have to give to your kids. But what you want to do is not necessarily reproduce some of the trauma, the distortions, the sin, and that was part of your upbringing into their life. And that, I think that the work of God in that examination process, through a helper can help do that, and our kids are particularly powerful reflections to us of what's still lingering in there. They have a way of just kind of being themselves and reflecting that back to us. Kind of like, did you just catch yourself being like your dad or your mom? They don't actually say that, but in our struggle with them, sometimes we see that. And, shame is a deal killer. Like if we feel shame about our history or what's happened to us, there's still work that needs to be done. Grief is different. Grief actually is more productive. It gets you into a place where you can really grow and learn and mature. But shame really gets you stuck. And you actually end up reproducing, a lot of that stuff in your life when you're just stuck in shame. And again, I think, sometimes that requires some intentionality to really dislodge and address and, move past. So, but I mean, I also, I think it's important that our kids have a sense of history, that they come from somewhere, that they know us and our parents and our grandparents. I mean, that's just really rich. And so it's like, it kind of helps them understand like who they are in the world and how they got here and, what they're carrying forward, So it's not something to hide from in the past. It's something to be aware of and examine,
Yep. Anything else you want to ask on this point?
No, not any question that come to mind right now. That's really good. That's really good. I feel like I've done a lot of work in the past couple years with that, just kind of personally.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of things still coming through.
Yeah.
That I really know that still need to be worked on. But I think I'm aware of it, and I think awareness is
huge.
One of the first steps.
Yeah. And too, like your kids being, eventually you'll be able to connect dots for them and speak very directly to things, but like showing them and speaking very specifically about how God's been at work in these areas of your life. Because ultimately what you want them to do is know Jesus. And one of the ways that they come to know Jesus is in our weaknesses and our deficiencies. That's what Paul says, right? When we are weak, he is strong. His grace is more than sufficient in our powerlessness. And so sometimes when our histories make us feel that way, or we feel that way in those places where we feel stuck, that's a really powerful place to allow the truth of the gospel to come shining through in its most compelling way.
Yeah.
I really liked what you said earlier. I think it was at the beginning of the podcast where you were talking about just giving them freedom, just giving them, the maybe not putting those tight boundaries around them. Because I had, growing up Amish, I had tight boundaries. And when we gained a better understanding of who God was or who God is, that also gave me a better understanding of how God has our kids. Like he has them, he's holding them. And so the pressure that was just kind of like taken off my shoulders was tremendous. But I think I still have to come back to that. I still struggle with that fear sometimes. Like, okay, the boundaries are not tight here. I'm letting them, I'm giving them freedom, but there's just occasionally that like fear that grips me. Like, what if this is wrong? What if I'm and I know that's part of like probably the devil using, attacks on my life, on me, on my mind, because every time that I cry out to God, I'm just like, I know you have them. I know that you do. Like, just help me to be able to release that control of maybe those, like, they have to walk in the line because they have to walk this path because what they do reflects back on how I am as a parent, which was a big deal in that culture.
Yeah.
Like, your kids, how your kids turn out, that is a huge reflection of how you parented. And so being able to release that, and still releasing that has been huge.
I think that what you're describing is such an important reality for a parent. Is they do reflect us, but not our honor or ultimately our identity or our security or our standing before God. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not involved in that in terms of our salvation and hope. And so releasing them of that and releasing ourselves of that, is the freedom that we have been given in Christ. And walking in that freedom then allows us to have so much more clarity and wisdom as to how to love them and care for them, I mean, fear just makes the world really small and frightening. And so when we do that, it really narrows it down, and it just really, a lot of anxiety production happens there, So, I think freedom is such a great quality in parenting, whereas like fear is just a real poison, in parenting.
And freedom from a good foundation.
Freedom from that good foundation.
Place.
And like think about, like Paul would say, he says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. Like that's a radical kind of freedom that if you really had a lot of rules, you'd be like, hang on a second, Apostle Paul, don't you want to say something else about that? But that's, again, one of those, as your kids mature, that's a great way of like saying, hey, anything's possible. You could go out and do anything. But let's talk about what's the best way to live. Let's talk about what's the better story to tell. Let's talk about what really is optimal, like your thriving self, And that to me is like, that's a wisdom. That carries wisdom. That kind of conversation. There's freedom in that to me. Yeah.
And I think that's also where you find the enjoyment of the kids. I think that's been our experience a little bit. It's just like that, and that enjoyment of being with them. And I want to be able to do that more and more. Like, I feel like we're finding our way, or I'm finding my way, to that, to a certain extent.
That's really
awesome.
That's awesome. That to me is the finding your way as a parent. That's a great way of describing what it is we do as parents. We're really finding our way.
Yes.
It really is.
We walk by faith, in that space, and God gives us grace when we need it, and so thank the Lord for that. So finding our way, that'd be a good title of a parenting book. See, so.
I'm not right.
I'm sure that already exists, but we wouldn't know because we haven't read any of them. Did you find that song from Luke yet?
Yeah, no, let me see.
Noah.
No, let's see which one it was. I think it was off the X and Y album.
Yes, I love that
that's
album.
a good album. Heck
and I think it was Speed of Sound, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. He has good taste in music.
Yeah. So, he just spent a lot of time in the car, and
Yeah.
So we've that's definitely something they were definitely influenced by.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that covers it in terms of what we wanted to touch on for sure.
Oh, thank you guys so
Anything
much.
else that you guys wanted to
thank you
touch on?
Hey, thank you.
No.
Yeah, thank you guys very
like
much.
an inspiration.
Oh,
to
absolutely.
You
us.
guys are so kind.
That's
Absolutely.
very kind.
The
and
kids are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
We're
And you guys are
grateful.
awesome.
Well, thank you. We're very grateful. It's really fun right now. We got Reese is married. He's a school teacher
at a charter school.
at a
inner
charter
city
school in
Okay.
Houston. Yeah.
Okay.
Inner city.
Christina's his wife does college young life in Houston.
Okay.
And then Noah, our middle son, he's graduating from seminary, about to start his PhD. He's about to get married, so he's in a really exciting time in his life. Chelsea is his fiance. She's about to start her PhD, so they're really academic and just amazing, chasing after the things that are really important and exciting to them. And then Amy is our youngest, and she's in studying architecture in Houston
And whitewater rafting.
and whitewater rafting in the
Whitewater rafting,
summertime.
that's
She
right.
can't stay away from the river. Huh?
I know, right?
Wow.
Well,
is
that was
cool.
our darn fault, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
We
doubt.
took them every year, and
Yeah.
No doubt.
had told them since they were little bitty, well, y'all are going to work here, so.
So they've all had turns there.
And the
Yeah.
first time we left Reese there, and he was 16.
Yeah.
And we dropped him off, and we were just bawling like babies. Like, what are we doing?
For the summer.
Colorado.
What a great experience, though.
No,
It was
seriously.
awesome. He
Wow.
worked there for 7 summers.
Oh,
So-
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, they all are just, we're so thankful that they're all pursuing the things that bring them joy. They're struggling well in their different seasons of their life, you know, and just really grateful for them. So
No doubt. Well, you guys are great and your kids are too. But the other thing that I think we didn't talk about this, but I kind of felt coming into this conversation that would probably happen, which is, you know, like you guys are coming from a theological standpoint or a certain worldview that tends to strip away like the anxiety and fear, you know, like we get kind of wound up a little bit in like anxiousness or maybe even fear or concern or, you know, pressure, that type of thing. And, but you're coming from a standpoint of, you know, basically the opposite of that,
Yeah.
you know, like a standpoint of
Freedom.
security,
Yeah.
which I think part of it does have to do with one's theology, you know, like, you know, if to be a Christian, you have to do everything just right.
yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
And a lot of times in that circle, one of the top things on the list is being like a really A+ parent, which means your kids
Right.
are well behaved and they're doing some prescribed sort of behaviors or they're
Sure.
not doing certain things. There's a lot of corruption inside of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's anti-gospel in a lot of ways.
Yep.
You know, so I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you noticing that because I'm very thankful for that, you know, that God has brought that about in our life and cultivated that in us. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That is anti-gospel, actually,
Yeah.
when you think about it. All right. Well, thank you guys again.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it very
Thank
much.
you,
Yeah,
and your
appreciate it.
sweet family.
All right.
yeah, you do have a sweet family.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.